So, first question, what did you do as a child?
When I was a child, we spent lots and lots of time outside. We used to, like in the winter, we spent a lot of time sledding, and we used the old fashioned sleds with the steering on the front, so you laid on your belly. And when there were lots of us and we didn't have enough sleds, we used cardboard and we rolled up the front of it, and we came shooting down the hills on cardboard. Um, we spent a lot of time skating in the winter because there was a place up behind our house called Goose Pond, and so we used to go up there and go skating a lot. So basically, we spent a lot of time outside. Um, in the summer, I spent a lot of time right across from the school in that river swimming, because back then you could go in the river and swim, and so we spent a lot of time there. We also spent a lot of time in the summer playing baseball. Up behind our house, there was a great big huge open field, and so we went up there and played baseball. So a lot of baseball we spent doing in the summer. You have to remember, back when I was young, that there were no computers, no iPads, and when I was really young, we didn't even have a TV. And then finally we got an old rickety black and white TV, which wasn't really exciting to watch. So most of our things were done outside or with our brothers and sisters. We used to camp, but we didn't have big fancy tents like today or campers. We used to use the clothesline and hang blankets over it, and that was our tent where we slept out overnight. So we did lots of things like that that were just fun outside, and then sometimes we would walk to the store in West Pawlet, and the store was a lot. Do you guys know where the store was that burnt down?
No,
Well, Dutchie's store, it was right in the center of West Pawlet. But when I was a little girl, there were two stores in West Pawlet. There was that one and then Burdick's over by the post office. And it was great to go there because they had lots and lots of penny candy. So you could go with like 13 cents and come back with a big bag full of those hot balls, those really hot balls, or big chunks of bubble gum and all that sort of thing. And also at the West Pawlet store, they used to make homemade ice cream cones, and they weren't very expensive at all. You know, could probably like for 10 cents get a nice ice cream cone. And so we used to walk, but we used to walk from our house up there to get ice cream. When I was little, younger than you guys, we did not have a car. So where we went, we walked. And we used to walk up there. That was our treat, to go to West Pawlet, and there were lots of things going on up there, like clubs and 4-H and all that. So we would go up there and do that. And we lived right by the river, so it was fun to go in the river and go exploring for things in the river. So we basically spent most of our time outside doing things.
nice. Second question, what inspired you to be a teacher?
I guess my inspiration for being a teacher came from really thinking kids are really cool people. I really like kids. I like their ideas. I like their curiosity. And so I really wanted to help them get better at things. I had a little brother and a little sister who I always was trying to teach them how to do something. So I guess even when I was probably 10 or 11 years old, like the age of you guys, that I was already beginning thinking about teaching. And the other part was I was always curious. Whenever something was happening, I always wanted to know why it was happening, what was happening, and so I always wanted to read a book or ask someone questions. And so I thought teaching and sharing that would be a fun way to do it with kids. And I really think kids are cool people. You guys are the best people to work with. You have lots of neat ideas. You have lots of curiosities yourself. It's great to see a kid all of a sudden be able to read something or to do something. I love science, as you know. So to see kids do something for a science experiment and be really surprised and shocked what happened. So I guess all those kinds of things made me think I wanted to be a teacher.
Okay, next question. What was teaching like over the years?
Um, well, I started teaching 40 years ago, probably older than some of your parents, and longer than some of your parents are old. When I very first started, again, there were no computers, no technology, so everything was basically out of books. We did do a few little experiments and things, but not a lot. Most of it was you had a book, you read the book. When I went to school, I had some teachers that were really, really strict. Like when I was in 5th grade, if you did something wrong, she would make you put your hand like this, and she would whack you right across your knuckles with rulers. And if you did something the second time that wasn't good, she would put two rulers together and hit you, and the rulers would kind of snap up and down, and they would really hurt, really hurt. Luckily today we can't do that. I would never do that as a teacher. I would never do anything to hurt a kid. Another funny story is that I think is funny. When I started school, my family moved into New York State. And so I was 6 and I was ready to go to first grade. Except when I moved into New York State, the law said you had to go to kindergarten. And Vermont didn't have kindergarten. So I spent one day in first grade, and the next day the principal came and took me back to kindergarten in a different school. So I went to one school for one day, and then I went back to kindergarten in another school. And I don't know, do you guys know much about Granville? Do you know where the park is in Granville?
A little.
Where they have all that entertainment? Well, that's where I went to school. It was a big brick building, 2 or 3 stories high, and that's where I went most of the time for school. And then I ended up going to the high school. But when I very first started teaching in 1975, that was the very first time we had a computer in our classroom, and we were all excited, but it really was more like a typewriter, because all you could really do on it was type your reports, and everybody thought it was like the coolest thing ever. But today you guys would look at it and go, yeah, this is like a typewriter. It's not even exciting, because it wasn't connected to internet. There was nothing. It was just, and then as I started teaching, then we started getting better computers and use a lot more computers in our teaching. So those are some of the main changes. I think what else was really different? Oh, I got to spend time with my brother. Do any of you have siblings? You don't have a sibling that you're with in the same grade? She's in this classroom. Well, I had a brother who ended up in the same grade as I was. And I was very interested in school and learning, and he really wasn't that interested. So he did everything he could to pretend like, oh, I know I have my homework, and he'd be digging in his desk, and I would be so embarrassed. And we knew he didn't have his homework done, but he would dig and dig. Another little story is we had an art project one day, and I'm not really the world's biggest artist, so I worked and worked and worked on my art project. And my brother, the night before the art project was due, took a big piece of white paper, and he put a black dot in the middle of it. Took him all of 2 seconds, and he took that in for the art project. And the art teacher was like, whoa, that's the coolest thing. What do you think it was? What do you think he said it was? He said it was his art, and he said it was a polar bear in a snowstorm. So all you could see was the little black polar bear's nose, and the art teacher just loved it. She thought it was the coolest thing. So I got to spend a lot of time with a brother who usually had things work out for him, and he didn't do much work at all. So my school years were a little interesting with him. So I don't know what else I can tell you about it.
Okay. And last question. Was there any technology when you were in school?
No.
No?
No. When I was in school, there was no technology. We took typing class, but it was on an old-fashioned, it wasn't even an electric typewriter. It was just a plain old, if you've ever seen one, you just click and the paper rolls out eventually. So when I was in school, there was no technology. When I started teaching, like I say, my first year in 1975 was the first time we had this supposedly called a computer. Really wasn't too great. And then probably about 5 years after that, we started getting real computers where you could hitch up to the internet and really use a computer as opposed to just type something.
Thank you.
So there's only a couple of other things that I would like to share if you guys got a couple of minutes.
Yeah, sure.
I thought it was really interesting that you, as 6th graders, went to the Kennedy down to see his library and look at all that. And I'm sure for you guys it was probably history. But for me, I'm one of those people that can remember the exact day that he was assassinated, because I was coming home on the school bus, and I could see like my house up the road, and the school bus driver stopped to let off one of my friends on the bus, and this lady, the mom to this kid, came running to the bus crying, and she was telling us that John F. Kennedy had been assassinated. So that was in 1963, and I remember that just like it happened yesterday, and how sad everybody was, and how everyone was crying, and everyone was screaming, and everyone was feeling so bad to lose a president. So that's something that I really remember. Do you have any other kinds of questions or anything else? Or anything you want me to kind of tell you?
How did the John F. Kennedy's assassination affect you?
Well, it affected me, I guess, because my family was very sad. My family also thought that he had some really good ideas about helping people. We really liked his statements where he talked about not asking what people could do for me, but thinking about what could I do to help people, whether I was helping as a teacher or whether I was helping in the community. I liked his ideas about how important it was for us to think about things we could do rather than just think about what can someone give me. And so I think that probably had a big impact on my life. And then losing him was, and I felt bad for their family because my family was really close. And I knew he had a little boy and a little girl who weren't going to have a dad. So I guess all of those kinds of things really made, I think, our whole country sad along with me.
Yeah.
It was really a hard time for everybody. So is there anything else you can think of or anything?
No, nothing I can think of.
I don't know. Like, mine's kind of a blank today.
Did I answer enough about school and about, or is there anything else about the town or anything you're curious about? When I was a little girl also in West Pawlet, you could go up and watch the train go through. And now I think if you go to West Pawlet, some of you might go there and walk on those tracks as like a rail trail.
Yeah.
But when I was growing up, you could really see the passenger train go through, and the cargo train. The cargo train, I was real little, but by the time I was like your age, I could go there and see the passenger train go through. People used to actually hop on that train and go to school in Granville because when they needed to get there, they would sneak on the train. Probably not the best plan, but they would do that and ride to Granville on the train.
My mom used to do that.
Did she?
Yeah.
Then she understands what I'm saying. So West Pawlet has changed a lot. There's lots of new people in West Pawlet. Lots of people that I didn't know because when I was growing up, almost everybody that lived there worked in the quarries. My dad came from Europe, and he worked in the quarries, and so the slate quarries were mostly why people were here, and that's why the train was in town, because it carried the slate, brought coal in. We didn't have fuel oil. Most of us had houses that burnt wood or coal, and so that little tiny building near the train was where they ran the coal business. And then the big tall house that's there, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but that used to be the coal sheds. And that's kind of strange because that's where the train used to dump the coal into that building. And now people actually live there, which is a lot different than it used to be. When you think about living in a house that used to be just to store coal in. So West Pawlet has changed a lot in the time I grew up. I used to work in that store. I started working when I was about the same age as you guys are. And I started working in the Dutchie's store. And first I started babysitting. And then eventually I started working 2 hours every night. I think I was in 7th grade when I actually started working in the store. I worked 2 hours every night, and I worked Saturday afternoon. So I needed my math skills. I needed all those things to be able to do that. Because back then, the cash register didn't tell me how much change to give people. So if they gave me a $20 bill, the cash register would tell me that they owed me $8 and something, but then I had to make the change and give it back to them. Today the cash registers, you look up and it says, oh, I need to give him $2.75. When I did it, they didn't do that. You had to count the change back out to him. So there's so many things that are so different in my lifetime that probably some of you guys, like Kennedy, I'm sure for you that was really history because you don't really remember too much about it unless you talk to your parents or your grandparents. They may have shared something about it. So I don't know what else I can think of that I could share with you. Along with working, we used to get off the bus at night when we lived on County Route 29, which is going out of West Pawlet. We used to get off the bus at night, and our job was I had a younger brother and sister, and I had the pesky brother that was my age. And when we got home at night, you guys, when you get home at night, you probably go off to baseball, you go off to soccer, you go off to your iPads or whatever. When we got home at night, I had to start getting supper for our family because both my mom and dad worked. And my brother had to put the coal in the coal stove, otherwise the house was pretty cold. And so we always had jobs to do. And one funny story I can share with you is one night this pesty brother of mine decided that he was going to make a big surprise for my mom. She was really great at making pies, so he was going to make a pie for her. Didn't have too much talent, but he thought he could do it. So he took all the ingredients and made this big gooey pie crust. And then when he started to try to put it in the pan, he realized that was not going to work. So he didn't want to get in trouble for wasting everything. So he rolled everything up and took it across our house and threw it in the Indian River because he thought he could get rid of it and my mother would never know. And as he threw it in the Indian River, all the little minnows swam up and started eating the pie crust. And obviously there was way too much grease in it because the poor little minnows flipped upside down. Their bellies were like puffed right out, and they floated down and went over the dam, and that was his pie crust making adventure. So we had lots of adventures with him doing things that maybe weren't the best. And we had one thing in common with you guys. I bet you all have pets.
Yeah.
We had a great dog named Woodchuck. He was an old mutt, but he spent all the time with us, and he was sliding with us, and he would get on the sleds if he thought he could and come down the hills. And he would, if you hit the ball and you weren't watching, he'd be out in the field getting the ball and carrying it off somewhere. So we had a pet. My dad always had hunting dogs and all sorts of pets. We had a little tiny pet dog who liked this little footstool, and the bigger he got, and the footstool didn't get any bigger, he would roll right off the footstool. But every time he came in the house, he still thought he should sleep on that footstool. So lots of adventures with pets. So we had pets in common, even though things were a lot different. Our very first car was called a puddle jumper, and it was a puddle jumper for a reason, because it was a station wagon, which you don't see too many of those today. Do you know what a station wagon is? Well, the only problem with this station wagon is that part of the floor was rusty in the bottom. So as kids, we gave it the name of the puddle jumper because when we would go to Granville and go down a dirt road, we had lots of dirt roads then, and the water would splash right up through inside of the car. So we ended up nicknaming it the puddle jumper because we hoped it would jump the puddles and not give us a bath, which it did a lot. So it was kind of fun. It was exciting growing up. We didn't have tons of stuff, but we had a lot of fun together. We did a lot of fun things together with our family. So anything else, guys, you can think of?
One more question.
Go ahead.
What was your favorite subject in school?
My favorite subject has always been science. And I think part of that is because I'm always curious. When I see something happening, I'm always wondering, why did that happen? Why did that balloon pop? Or why do those bugs land on me and poke on me? And why if I see a honeybee, my dad raised honeybees, why if they sting you, don't they ever sting you again? Because like a wasp will sting you and sting you and sting you. And so I found out that honeybees, once they sting you, their back end pulls out, and so they die. So I guess my favorite subject has always been science because I've always been curious. And I've always wanted to know why something is happening. And so yes, that's a very good question. I like lots of things, but science is definitely my favorite subject. I love to read, I love to do all those things, but science is my first choice always.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Just one more question.
Okay.
What was your one favorite thing to do as a child?
Well, I guess probably the big favorite thing was get-togethers with my family, because our family was always close, and my mother always had everybody in the community. Any kid that wanted a place to play or wanted to come and play cards, that's really how I learned to count, was playing cards and playing card games and making sure that I was getting the points I needed to get. I had to use my math, otherwise I had that brother that I was talking about that would tell me he had more points than I did. So I guess my favorite thing of all times was my family. We had big bonfires. down in back of our yard. We cooked lots of things on there. And like I say, anybody in town that was having a bad moment or just wanted a place to come and have some fun, our house was always full. There were 6 of us, and there were very few times that our house didn't have like 20 people in it, just having fun, listening to music, playing cards, playing games. I played games like Parcheesi and Monopoly, things that you guys may know and may not know. Lots of checkers, and tons of card games. I used to know probably 20 different card games. I could probably remember some of them now, but maybe not all of them. But so I guess just being with my family. And like I say, it was a lot different because we did a lot of work as kids. Some of you guys sometimes come home and, like I say, do fun things. And we really came home and had a lot of jobs to do, but we always had a good time doing it. No, there were some days when we got grumpy. There were once in a while when you wanted to come home and you just wanted to not do anything. But you sort of knew that Mom and Dad were busy. We had a little brother and sister who we used to have to walk up to West Pawlet and bring home after school. And we used to all swing hands and sing, I don't know if you know the song, probably not, Poor Old Kalijah, the Poor Old Wooden Head. It was a silly kind of song that we would swing hands and walk along the river and throw stones and go home. So I guess family is my number one thing. We just had a great time with family, regardless of what we were doing. Roller skating, bowling, just a variety of things, but mostly outside. Like I told you before, outside was where we spent most of our time. Because I hear kids today, and I hear adults say today, oh, we're going camping, I need to get the camper, I need to get all this. We got a couple of old blankets, and we went out, put them over the clothesline, started a little cooking fire, and we had a great time camping, and did things to kind of irritate our mom and dad when they were trying to sleep, and things like that, but we had a lot of fun. We never did anything really bad to hurt anybody, but like if we knew we could get under their bedroom window and make strange sounds and try to wake them up and things like that during the night, we did some of that. So we had a lot of fun as kids, a whole variety of things. So anything else?
No.
I know you said earlier your brain wasn't thinking, but do you think of anything else? I have those moments too.
I don't think so.
Because I'm going to guess as soon as you guys walk away, I'm going to say, oh, I meant to tell them, and I'm going to find out that I didn't. So I guess I would like to end with just one thing, and that is, there's 2 things that I really think are really important in my life. And one thing is to enjoy your family and friends and work hard. Because you can accomplish anything you want to accomplish if you work hard. And the other thing is try to find something every day to smile about. Even if it's only yourself. Because sometimes when you think things are not really working out too well, I can usually always think of some silly thing I've done during the day, and it makes me go, okay, that was pretty silly, but that was okay. Like the other day when I needed to go get my picture on my license, and I cut up, thinking I was cutting up an old license, and I cut up my good driver's license. So I had to go up and say to them last night when I was up there, sorry, because I really do have a driver's license, except I cut it up like little bits of spaghetti. So instead of getting really mad and getting really upset, I just said, Mrs. Ripley, look what you've done now. I kind of had a laugh about it and kind of laughed with the guy up there, and he was like, okay, okay. He probably thought I was crazy, but he said, okay, we'll work on a license and getting you one, and I did. So just take time to enjoy life and be happy. Even if there's something bad going on, try to find some little thing to smile about. It really makes your life better. And everything is not perfect. Because when I was growing up, my dad got hurt in the quarry, and there were months and months where he laid in bed, and we didn't know if he was going to be okay. So that was really sad. But even in that, we found some things to be happy about. Even if it was only smiling about yourself. And I do a lot of that, trust me. So, anything else? Well, it has been delightful getting to know you a little bit and getting to see you again, and I really wish you luck in all you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck next year, guys.
Thank you, Mrs. Ripley. If I could get a little treat.